The Galactic Cartography Guild had been making maps for 12,000 years. They knew where every star was. They knew where every planet sat in the darkness of space. They had drawn lines showing the territories of 900 different alien species. Every trade route, every safe path, every dangerous zone was marked clearly on their maps. But there was one place where their maps showed nothing at all. Captain stood on the bridge of her ship, the Eternal Compass. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and silver hair that she kept tied back in a simple knot. For 30 years, she had served the Cartography Guild. She had mapped nebulas that could swallow entire solar systems. She had charted paths through asteroid fields that moved like living things. She had never been afraid of the unknown. Until now. The holographic display in front of her showed the galaxy in beautiful detail. Golden lines connected stars like a spider's web made of light. Blue dots marked space stations. Green areas showed safe zones for travel, but at one edge of the map all the colors stopped. There was only gray, empty gray that stretched across a massive section of space. A warning floated in that gray emptiness. It was written in the old language, the one that the guild used for their most serious messages. Read it slowly, feeling a cold weight settle in her stomach. Human territory, boundaries unknown, do not enter. She turned to look at her second in command. Was an older man with a kind face and hands that shook slightly from age. He had been making maps since before was born. If anyone knew about this warning, it would be him. "Senior cartographer," she said, keeping her voice calm. "When was this warning placed on our maps?" Checked his records. His fingers moved slowly across the console, pulling up files that were older than most civilizations. When he found the answer, his face went pale. 8,000 years ago, Captain, right after the First Contact War. 8,000 years, repeated, and nobody has updated it since then. Nobody has explored that space. Nobody has tried to learn more about these humans. Shook his head. No ship that crossed that border ever came back to tell us what they found. After a while, people stopped trying. The guild decided it was better to just leave that space alone. Stared at the gray emptiness on her map. 8,000 years was a long time. Civilizations rose and fell in less time than that. Wars were fought and forgotten. Species evolved and changed. How could one warning stay valid for so long? She was about to ask more questions when her communications officer, a young woman named, called out from her station. "Captain, I am picking up ships coming from the direction of the gray zone. Many ships. They are moving fast." Walked to the viewing window and looked out into space. At first she saw nothing but stars. Then slowly shapes began to appear, ships, dozens of them, then hundreds. But these were not exploration vessels or trade ships. These were warships, massive cruisers with hulls that had been built for battle, and they were damaged, badly damaged. Burn marks covered their surfaces. Holes had been torn through their armor. Some of them were barely holding together, leaving trails of debris as they flew. "Those are ships," said quietly. He had come to stand beside her, and his old eyes were wide with shock. "That is the Imperial fleet, or what is left of it." Knew about the... Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were the great power, a species that had built an empire by conquering everyone in their path. In just 300 years, they had taken control of 60 star systems. Their emperor had declared that no force in the galaxy could stop them. 6 months ago, they had announced that they were going to explore the gray zone. They had laughed at the old warnings on the maps. They had said that whatever species lived there could not possibly stand against the might of the empire. Now watched as their broken ships fled past her position. Whatever they had found in that gray emptiness, it had nearly destroyed them. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Try to contact one of those ships. Ask them what happened." Worked at her console for several minutes. Finally, she looked up with a troubled expression. "They are refusing to answer, Captain, all of them. I have tried every ship, every frequency. They will not speak to us. Why not? I do not know, but I am picking up something else. Audio from inside their ships. The crew members are talking to each other. Let me hear it. Pressed a button and the bridge filled with sound. At first, could not understand what she was hearing. It sounded like crying, like screaming, like people who had lost their minds to fear. Then she heard words, broken, terrified words. They just kept coming. We hit them and they just kept coming. They did not even slow down. They did not even fire back. They just kept coming. Another voice joined in, high and panicked. The map was right. The map was right. We should have listened. The map was right. Felt ice run through her blood. She looked at the gray zone on her display, at that ancient warning that had stood unchanged for 8,000 years. Human territory, do not enter. For the first time in her long career, captain of the Galactic Cartography Guild understood that some parts of the universe were not meant to be mapped. Some borders were not meant to be crossed. And somewhere in that gray emptiness, something was waiting. Something that had just reminded the galaxy why the map ended at human space. Admiral had been the pride of the Empire. He was tall and strong, with scales that shone like polished bronze and eyes that had seen 100 victories. For 40 years, he had led the Third Fleet from one conquest to another. No enemy had ever defeated him. No species had ever made him feel fear. That changed when he entered human space. His memoirs were found inside a damaged escape pod 3 weeks after the war ended. The pod had drifted for thousands of miles through empty space before a guild salvage ship discovered it. Was dead when they found him. He had recorded his final thoughts before the end came. The recording began with confidence. His voice was strong and proud as he described entering the gray zone. We crossed the border with 500 ships, he said. The finest warships the Empire had ever built. Our weapons could crack moons in half. Our shields could stop any attack. We expected to find primitives hiding in caves, waiting to be conquered. The first thing they noticed was how quiet human space was. Their sensors searched for massive fleet stations but found none. They looked for planet-killing weapons but saw nothing. They scanned for spheres, for artificial suns, for any sign of advanced military power. All they found were small colonies, simple settlements on quiet worlds, ships that looked old and slow compared to cruisers. Everything about human space seemed weak and unprotected. We thought they were fools, recording continued. We thought they had no idea how to fight a war. We laughed at their tiny ships and their undefended planets. We chose our first target and prepared to show them what real power looked like. The target was a colony called Nu. It was a small world covered in green forests and blue oceans. Population, 40,000 humans. There were no military bases on the surface. No weapons platforms in orbit, just farms and cities and families living their simple lives. Admiral positioned his fleet above the planet and opened a communication channel. He demanded that the humans surrender immediately. He told them that resistance was pointless. He promised that those who obeyed would be treated fairly as servants of the Empire. A woman appeared on his screen. Her name was, and she was the governor of Nu. She was small and old, with gray hair and calm eyes. She did not look afraid. She did not look angry. She looked at Admiral the way a grandmother might look at a child who had done something foolish. "You have made a mistake," she said simply. Laughed at her. His officers laughed with him. A single old woman threatening the greatest fleet in the galaxy. It was absurd. "You are the one who has made a mistake," replied. "You should have surrendered when you had the chance." He gave the order to fire. The fleet bombarded Nu from orbit. Their weapons turned cities into craters. Their lasers burned forests to ash. Their missiles shattered mountains and boiled oceans. In less than an hour, the colony was destroyed. 40,000 humans died in fire and smoke. They celebrated their victory. They drank and sang and congratulated themselves on their easy conquest. Admiral recorded a message to send back to the Emperor, telling him how simple it had been to defeat these weak creatures called humans. But in his memoirs written weeks later, his voice had changed. The pride was gone. Only confusion remained. "We did not notice the strange things at first," he said. "We were too busy celebrating, but looking back I can see what we missed." No distress signals had been sent from New. Governor had not called for help. She had not begged other human colonies to send rescue ships. She had not warned anyone that they were coming. She had simply told them they had made a mistake. Then she had waited for the end. "We thought she was stupid," said. "We thought she was too proud to ask for help. We did not understand the truth." His voice cracked as he spoke the next words. "Humans do not call for help. They do not need to. When you hurt them, they do not run. They do not hide. They do not beg for mercy. They come for revenge. And they do not stop coming until the debt is paid." They had just killed 40,000 humans. They had just made 40,000 reasons for humanity to remember their name. At the time, Admiral did not understand what that meant. He moved his fleet deeper into human space, attacking 2 more colonies. Each time, the humans gave him the same calm warning. Each time, he ignored them. He was about to learn what those warnings really meant. He was about to discover why the galactic maps showed nothing but gray emptiness where human space should be. And he was about to understand, far too late, that some species do not fight wars the way others do. Some species do not fight to win. They fight to make sure you never fight again. For 3 weeks after the attack on New, nothing happened. Admiral led his fleet deeper into human space. They conquered 2 more colonies. They destroyed more cities. They killed more civilians. And through it all, the humans did nothing to stop them. No defense fleet came to protect the colonies. No mighty warships appeared to challenge the. No angry messages were sent demanding justice. There was only silence from the depths of human territory. Began to believe that humans truly were weak. Perhaps they had no military at all. Perhaps they had spent so many years in peace that they had forgotten how to fight. Perhaps the gray zone on the galactic maps was just an old mistake, a warning from a time long past that no longer meant anything. His officers agreed with him. They joked about how easy the conquest was. They talked about how many slaves they would take and how much treasure they would bring home. They were already planning their victory celebrations. Only one person on the fleet seemed worried. Her name was, and she was a young communications officer. She was small and quiet, the kind of person that important admirals rarely noticed, but was very good at her job. She listened to signals that others ignored. She noticed patterns that others missed. And she was the first to realize that something was very wrong. "Admiral," she said one morning, her voice shaking slightly, "I need to report something strange." Barely looked at her. He was studying maps of the next colony they planned to attack. "What is it?" "I cannot contact our supply lines anymore. The ships that were supposed to bring us food and fuel and ammunition. They are not answering." Frowned. "Equipment failure probably. Try again later." "I have tried for 3 days, Admiral. Nothing. And it is not just the supply ships." Pulled up data on her console. "I cannot contact the colonies we conquered. I cannot contact our bases along the route we traveled. I cannot contact anyone in space at all." This got his attention. He stood up and walked to her station, looking at the data himself. "That is impossible," he said. "Our communication systems are the best in the galaxy. We should be able to reach home from anywhere." "I know, Admiral, but there is only silence, complete silence. It is as if everyone behind us has simply disappeared." Felt a cold finger of fear touch his heart. He pushed it away. There had to be a logical explanation. "Send scout ships," he ordered. "Back along our route, find out what is happening with our supply lines." 6 scout ships were sent, fast ships with skilled pilots who knew how to avoid danger. None of them came back. Now the cold feeling in his chest would not go away. He ordered the fleet to stop advancing. He called his senior officers to a meeting. They argued for hours about what might be happening. Some thought it was equipment failure. Some thought there might be a natural disaster blocking their signals. Some suggested that the Emperor had simply forgotten about them. But deep down, they all knew the truth. They just did not want to say it out loud. The humans were doing something quiet, something they could not see or hear or detect with any of their advanced sensors. The silence was not because nothing was happening. The silence was because something terrible was being prepared. The answer came 3 days later. A single transmission reached the fleet. It did not come from space. It came from somewhere deep in human territory. The signal was clear and strong, cutting through all their security systems like they did not exist. A man appeared on their screens. He was human, with dark hair and a gentle face. He wore simple clothes, nothing that looked military or threatening. His name was, and he identified himself as a diplomatic representative of human space. He smiled as he spoke, the kind of warm smile that a friend might give you when you came to visit. "Greetings to the Third Fleet," he said. "My name is. I have been asked to deliver a message to Admiral and his officers." Stepped forward. "Where is our supply line? What have you done to our ships?" Smile did not change. "Please let me finish, Admiral. This will only take a moment." He folded his hands in front of him, still smiling gently. "You have killed approximately 40,000 of our civilians across 3 colonies. We want you to understand what happens next. This is not negotiable. There will be no discussion. There will be no treaty. There will be no surrender accepted." His voice remained calm and pleasant, like he was discussing the weather. "This is not a declaration of war. War implies 2 sides fighting. What is coming is not a war." Leaned slightly closer to the camera. "This is an extermination notice." The transmission ended. For a long moment, nobody on the bridge spoke. They stared at the empty screen, trying to understand what they had just heard. A single diplomat, smiling and polite, had just told them they were going to die. And somehow, that gentle smile was more terrifying than any threat had ever received. He looked at the gray emptiness on his maps, the vast unknown of human space stretching out around his fleet. For the first time, he understood why the Cartography Guild had stopped mapping this region 8,000 years ago. Some things were not meant to be found. And now that he had found them, there was no way to escape. The trap had already closed around him. He just had not realized it until now. General had served in the human military for 40 years. She was 63 years old now, with gray hair that she kept short and practical. She had 4 who called her every week to tell her about school and friends and their small, happy lives. She liked to garden in her free time. She grew tomatoes and peppers and flowers that made her little house smell like summer. She had spent her entire career hopping. She would never have to do what she was about to do. The human military was not like other militaries. They did not build huge fleets to show off their power. They did not conquer other species to expand their territory. They did not seek glory or fame or fear from the galaxy. They simply prepared, quietly, patiently. Generation after generation, they built ships that no one ever saw. They developed weapons that no one ever tested. They trained soldiers who never fought battles. And they waited. They waited for someone to forget why the map ended at human space. Now that day had come, and General had a job to do. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the tactical display. It showed the Third Fleet sitting in empty space, surrounded by the vast darkness of human territory. 800 warships, the finest vessels the Empire had ever built, enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Behind her, her officers waited for orders. They were calm and focused. None of them looked excited or eager. None of them celebrated the coming battle. This was not a game to them. This was not glory. This was simply the price that had to be paid. "How many ships do we have in position?" asked. 12, General, her tactical officer replied. The number hung in the air. 12 human ships against 800 warships. It seemed like madness. It seemed like suicide. But General simply nodded. "That should be enough," she said. "Begin the operation." The 12 human ships emerged from fold space around the fleet. They appeared without warning, their hulls black and angular, covered in material that seemed to swallow light itself. They were not beautiful ships. They were not designed to impress or intimidate. They were designed for one purpose only. Admiral stared at the tactical display on his bridge, his eyes wide with confusion. "Only 12, he said. "They send only 12 ships against us. Have they gone mad?" His officers laughed nervously. Perhaps this was good news. Perhaps the humans really were weak after all. Perhaps their threats had been empty words. Then General's voice came through on all communication channels. Her voice was calm and clear, without anger or hatred. "This is General of the Human Defense Force. I am required by human law to offer you one chance to surrender and face trial for your crimes against our civilians. You have 30 seconds to respond." Found his voice. "You dare threaten us. You bring 12 ships and dare threaten the might of the Empire." 20 seconds. "We have 800 warships. We will destroy you." 10 seconds. Turn to his weapons officer. "Open fire, destroy them all." The fleet unleashed everything they had. 800 ships fired at once. Missiles streaked through space. Laser beams burned through the darkness. Plasma cannons roared. The attack was massive, overwhelming, impossible to survive. Every shot hit its target. Admiral watched the explosions bloom against the human ships. He saw the impacts, felt the satisfaction of direct hits. His weapons were working. His fleet was fighting. Then the smoke cleared. The 12 human ships were still there. They had not moved. They had not even tried to dodge. The most powerful weapons in the arsenal had struck them directly, and they simply did not care. "That is impossible," whispered. "Our sensors confirmed direct hits. They should be destroyed." His tactical officer's voice shook with fear. "Admiral, our weapons are not penetrating their armor. I do not know what those ships are made of, but our attacks are doing nothing. Less than nothing. We barely scratched their paint." The human ships began to move. They did not fire weapons. They did not launch missiles. They simply accelerated, faster and faster, heading directly toward the fleet. "They are not shooting," someone said. "Why are they not shooting?" General's voice came one final time, quiet and sad. "We do not waste ammunition on those who have already chosen their fate." The human ships hit the fleet like hammers hitting glass. Admiral's final recording captured the next 7 minutes. His voice grew more and more panicked as he watched his fleet being destroyed around him. Ship after ship was torn apart, rammed at speeds that should have been impossible. The human vessels moved through the formation like wolves through sheep, unstoppable, unslowing, unafraid. "They are not ships," screamed into his recorder. "They are weapons. The ships themselves are the weapons. They do not need guns because they are the guns." His flagship was the last to fall. A human ship came for him, its black hull filling his. He had just enough time to record one final thought. "We killed 40,000 of them. They killed 800,000 of us in 7 minutes, and they did it with 12 ships." His voice dropped to a whisper. "What could they do with 100, with 1,000? What have we awakened?" The transmission ended. But General was not finished. The fleet was gone, but the debt was not yet paid. 40,000 humans had died. 40,000 families had been destroyed. 40,000 voices called out for justice. and human justice was absolute. She turned to her navigation officer. "Set course for the—" The officer nodded without hesitation. "Course set, General. We will arrive in 6 hours." Looked out at the debris field that had once been 800 warships. She felt no satisfaction, no triumph, only the heavy weight of what still needed to be done. They had forgotten why the map ended at human space. Now they would remember. Now everyone would remember. It was called Valor Prime. It was a beautiful planet covered in golden plains and crystal blue seas. For 300 years, it had been the heart of a growing empire. Massive cities covered its surface. Orbital platforms circled it like a crown of steel and fire. Defense stations numbered in the thousands, each one carrying enough weapons to destroy entire fleets. No enemy had ever attacked Valor Prime. They believed it was impossible. Their defenses were too strong. Their weapons were too powerful. Their shields could stop any attack. They held for 6 hours. General did not come with 12 ships this time. She came with 50. Each one moved through the defenses like they were made of paper. Shields that were supposed to stop planet-killing weapons flickered and died. Stations that had stood for centuries were torn apart in minutes. The greatest military power that had ever built crumbled like sand. But the humans did not destroy Valor Prime. Captain, watching from far outside the battle zone, learned this from the refugee ships that fled past her position in the weeks that followed. The aboard those ships were broken, terrified, unable to believe what had happened to them. But they all said the same thing. The humans were not cruel. They did not bomb cities. They did not kill civilians. They did not burn the golden plains or poison the crystal seas. They simply removed every piece of military technology on the planet. Every warship was destroyed. Every weapons factory was melted to slag. Every orbital station was pulled from the sky. Every vehicle capable of leaving the atmosphere was taken apart. In a single month, the empire was reduced to a pre-civilization. They could still live on their beautiful planet. They could still farm and build and raise their children. But they would never leave their world again. They would never threaten anyone again. They would spend the rest of their existence looking up at the stars they could no longer reach, remembering the price of their mistake. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Then Ambassador appeared on every broadcast network. He wore the same simple clothes as before. He had the same gentle smile, the same warm eyes. He looked like a kind man, the sort of person you would trust with your children. "The Empire attacked our civilians," he said calmly. "They were warned. They did not listen. They have now paid the price." He paused and let the words sink in. The Galactic Cartography Guild's maps show a border around human space marked "Do not enter." Many of you have wondered why that warning exists. Many of you have thought it was outdated, foolish, unnecessary. Now you know the truth. His smile remained warm, but his eyes were steady and serious. "We do not seek conquest. We have no desire to rule the galaxy. We do not want your planets or your resources or your obedience. We simply wish to live in peace with our families, tend our gardens, and watch our children grow. But make no mistake about what we are." Leaned forward slightly. "The map ends at human space for a reason. Cross that border with hostile intent, and you will discover that humans do not fight wars the way you understand them. We do not fight to win. We do not fight for glory or territory or power. We fight to make sure you never fight again. They killed 40,000 of our people. Now they will never leave their planet again. This is human justice. It is not cruel. It is simply complete." His smile softened. "We hope this lesson will not need to be repeated. We truly do prefer peace. But if anyone else forgets why the map ends at human space..." He spread his hands in a gentle gesture. "We will remind you." The broadcast ended. Captain sat in silence on the bridge of the Eternal Compass. Around her, her crew was quiet. They had all watched the broadcast. They had all understood. Finally, Senior Cartographer spoke. "Should we update the maps, Captain?" Nodded slowly. "Yes, expand the warning, add the new data, make sure every ship in the galaxy knows what happened here." Her navigator, Young, had a troubled look on her face. "Captain, the humans have invited diplomatic missions now, trade delegations, cultural exchanges. I heard they are quite friendly to visitors who come in peace." "They are," agreed. "Then why do we not map their space? Why do we keep the gray zone empty?" Turned to look at the viewing window. Somewhere out there, past the stars she could see, was human territory. A region of space where 40,000 people had been killed, and an empire had been erased from existence in response. "I met one of their diplomats once," she said softly. "A woman named. She smiled at me the entire time we talked. She offered me tea. She asked about my family. She was the kindest, warmest person I have ever met." His hands tightened on the arms of her chair. 2 weeks later, I learned that she was the same governor who faced the fleet, the one who told them they had made a mistake. She watched her world burn. She watched 40,000 of her people die. And when I met her, she smiled and offered me tea. She shook her head. "Humans are friendly. Humans are kind. They genuinely want peace. But underneath that kindness is something else. Something patient. Something that remembers every wrong and never forgives. Something that will smile at you while planning your complete destruction if you give them reason." Looked at the gray emptiness on her map. "That is why we keep the warning. That is why we do not map their space. Because the most terrifying thing about humans is not their weapons or their ships or their soldiers. It is that you cannot tell by looking at them what they are capable of. They hide it behind gentle smiles and warm words and offers of friendship, but it is always there, waiting." She turned back to face her crew. "The map ends at human space. Let it stay that way. Let every child who looks at a star chart see that gray emptiness and wonder what lives there. Let every captain and every admiral and every emperor remember the. Let them remember that some borders are not meant to be crossed." In the 10,000 years that followed, no species ever attacked human space again. The warning remained on every map, unchanged and unquestioned. And somewhere in that gray emptiness, humans continued to tend their gardens and raise their children and smile their gentle smiles. Waiting. Always waiting. Just in case someone else needed to be reminded why the map ended at human space.